Have you ever had an awkward dinner with your family? With every bite, you swallow back the tension of the prolonged meal, an eruption waiting to go off as soon as someone dares to breathe the wrong way. Or the long car ride after a fight, where everyone sits silently in their own world, simmering in their frustrations. Even if we might share the same space, DNA, features, or history, our goals or points of view can be so different. Over the years, our behaviors might even become reciprocated irritants that can be too taxing to tolerate. There is no perfect family. However tiny or impactful, there are always issues beneath the surface. A group or institution formed of flawed beings can be an open invitation to misunderstandings and conflicts. Dysfunction sets in when the external and internal conflicts, like sibling rivalries, mental illness, or domestic violence, are left to take root, to the point that the basic needs of the family unit aren't being met. When we stop expressing ourselves in a healthy manner, where no one feels heard, when there's no longer any comfort with the people around us. So how can we show this reality cinematically? Not just the very visible external consequences, but the internal pain when a family is no longer synonymous to a home. In today's video, we will be introducing a new essay series that delves into the portrayal of dysfunctional families in film. For our first entry, we will be delving into the filmography of writer-director and fellow Quebecois Xavier Dolan. In case you haven't heard much about him, Dolan started off as a child actor, French voice actor, and directed his first film barely out of his teens. Since his directorial debut in 2009, his films have been accumulating award nominations and wins, notably at the Cannes Film Festival. His stories are grounded and personal, often told on a small scale, but never lacking in passion and honesty. We'll be looking at 3 examples of frayed family ties in his films. I Killed My Mother is Xavier Dolan's rough-around-the-edges first directorial effort. He wrote the script when he was 16 years old, and he describes it as semi-autobiographical. It's a coming-of-age story where we see Hubert, the protagonist, constantly in opposition with his mother as he tries to forge his own path. In Mommy, he expands on his exploration of the mother and son relationship, but this time, skewing the perspective more favorably towards the mother, Di, struggling with her problematic son. Steve has behavioral issues that have gotten him kicked out of school. His mother has her hands full caring for him and dealing with his outbursts while at the same time trying to get her life back on track. In It's Only the End of the World, an adaptation of the play by Jean-Luc Lagarce, we follow Louis as he returns home after a 12-year absence with the goal of telling his family that he's dying, but old wounds start to reopen that make this task even more difficult. Xavier Dolan manages to convey these families' dysfunctions by highlighting their isolation, lack of communication, and expressions of love. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead.
Penses-tu qu'il y a beaucoup d'enfants qui parlent comme ça à leur mère?
Penses-tu qu'il y a beaucoup de mères qui ont élevé leur enfant comme tu m'as élevé?
Being next to someone does not signify closeness. One can feel mentally and emotionally alone while physically sharing the same space. Xavier Dolan's films illustrate that detachment, with how he isolates the characters from one another. In It's Only the End of the World, the characters' struggle to connect is shown by how claustrophobic the cinematography is. When Louis steps into the family home, he enters the shallow depth of field, into a world he has estranged himself from and was no longer a part of. Everyone is framed at an uncomfortably intimate proximity in an already cramped house during a heat wave. Wide shots of the family are scarce and far in between, paralleling the few times a family can be on the same page, but it also helps to accentuate a certain emptiness at the end of a conversation. Louis' visit is eventually bookended by him exiting the shallow depth of field, becoming out of focus, extracting himself from this world, and no longer being a part of that reality. The use of a tight frame is fully explored in Mommy's 1:1 aspect ratio, making every shot feel like a portrait, but here the isolation is more of a social nature. 3 misfits forming the family they needed to overcome their struggles. When they find themselves in moments of joy, the aspect ratio opens up, expanding their horizons. This happens twice in the movie. The first is when Steve is getting his act together and starts to feel free, and the last is near the end during their road trip, when Di fantasizes about a bright future for themselves. This momentary lapse of joy is closed off as soon as they are faced with the harsh reality of their situation. In I Killed My Mother, we see that Xavier Dolan was still learning where to place the camera, but his love for close-ups is very apparent. It wasn't born out of a cinematic approach, but from still photography. However, even back then, it helped portray 2 people that are unable to share the same space. Hubert is constantly fighting with his mother Chantal. Every little thing that she does annoys him, and whenever they are together, the scene oozes of tension and you know that they are a couple of misplaced words away from screaming at each other. The intimate moments present in almost every family, at the table or in the car, are examples of their disunion. They are usually shot alone, framed way off center to give the impression of space. Xavier Dolan's intention was to make the audience feel the loneliness, like there was a chasm between the mother and son. They are physically close to each other, but we are shown how distant they are from reaching a consensus. Another way that Xavier Dolan isolates Hubert and his mother is by showing how different they are to the other characters. Their home is generally dark, kitschy, uninviting, and in direct contrast to Hubert's boyfriend's home, brighter, welcoming, containing a different mother-son dynamic that Hubert has never experienced. The only other place where Hubert feels comfortable is while making his black and white confessionals. We observe the way Hubert sees himself, where he is unburdened by his mother.
Antoine.
Quoi, Antoine? Antoine quoi? Antoine quoi? Ouais, c'est mon nom, ouais. Je m'appelle Antoine. Faudra un 24-34, je regarde pas Antoine.
The lack of open, honest, and healthy communication oftentimes goes hand in hand with isolation. The way we talk about our issues influences their gravity or effects, and can deepen family dysfunction. Hubert and Steve have a similar way of communicating with their mothers, that is, through verbal violence. They curse, they insult, they are offensive and demeaning, but in turn, the verbal barrage is reciprocated by the mothers. They give as hard as they take. Their unfiltered back and forth is left as a nameless emotional expression, unconductive to an actual dialogue. Even when they're not yelling, the words they use aren't transmitted efficiently. Hubert is often thinking of himself, while Chantal doesn't attach importance to her son's wants and needs. Louis' family dynamic is rooted in faulty communication. He hasn't seen them in 12 years, and yet he superficially fulfills his familial obligations by sending postcards on birthdays with barely a sentence written on them. It's odd that as a writer, he has such a limited vocabulary when communicating with the people he grew up with. Even when he arrives to tell them he's dying, he spends most of his stay in his own head and never has the chance to complete the one thing he flew over to do. It's the growing irony of the movie. None of his siblings nor his mother know of his intentions, or even why he left in the first place. They each perceive that something is going on, but don't know how to address it. The mother is stuck in the past. His sister, Suzanne, is reconciling the image of the person she barely knew, and his older brother Antoine is a spring of resentment. As Vincent Cassel puts it, he's a very brutal character because he doesn't know how to express himself. He sees his brother as his hero, even though he's the elder and it should be the other way around. Those inner conflicts, combined with his hard-headedness, compel Antoine to push Louis away so that he doesn't have to deal with the fallout of his brother leaving again. Adding to the irony, the only one that paid attention and listened to Louis isn't related to him by blood and had the most difficulty in speaking. Marion Cotillard's subtle expressions and reactions show us that Catherine, the sister-in-law, figured out the why of Louis' visit. The communication we're shown isn't verbal at all, it's in the eyes. She isn't loud, boisterous, or overdramatic like the rest of the family. Her different upbringing and emotional intelligence enable her to look past the double talk, to listen and empathize in a way that they are unable to, reaffirming the use of the close-ups. It wasn't what they were saying that mattered. It's the facial expressions and body language that reveals how they really feel. The family's inability to say what's on their mind is what fuels their constant spats, and basically renders them strangers amongst themselves because they are incapable of knowing each other on a deeper level.
Tu penses qu'on t'aime pas, hein? Qu'on te comprend pas? T'as raison. Je te comprends pas. Mais je t'aime.
You expect to find love in a household, but when looking into a dysfunctional family, the expressions of love might be harder to find or even recognize. In It's Only the End of the World, we see love be expressed by the lies they tell each other, the family misrepresenting themselves to impress Louis, and the main character's omission of his worsening health. Before leaving, Louis tells his family he will write more and visit again, knowing full well this might be the last time he sees them, but it's what they want to hear him say. Antoine's aggressivity is a misplaced effort to protect his family from his younger brother's departure. In I Killed My Mother, we can see the resilience of the love between a mother and son, that even if they are at times more like roommates, the anger and resentment they feel for each other will always be overshadowed by their love for one another. They seem to be in an ongoing back and forth cycle of fighting and then jumping to the other side. Like Hubert stated, if anyone would harm his mother, he would kill that person. When Hubert asks Chantal what she would do if he would die today, she answers,
Je mourrai demain.
In Mommy, Xavier Dolan tests the breaking point of this bond even further. From the beginning, Di is told something she will spend the whole movie refusing to accept.
C'est pas parce qu'on aime quelqu'un qu'on peut le sauver. L'amour a rien à voir là-dedans. Malheureusement.
Di struggles with Steve's mental health, but she's confident that her love as a mother is enough to give him a normal life, and for the most part, it is. Steve and Di show a lot of progress, but with every step forward, something happens to take them 2 steps back. It doesn't help that Steve's misplaced expressions of love can also become problematic for Di, taking the form of stealing for her, or jealousy-induced outbursts. In the end, she comes to terms with the reality that she isn't equipped to care for her son's well-being. She makes the extremely difficult decision to commit Steve to an institution as a final act of hope. It pains her to accept that her love as a mother might not have a limit, but her ability to care for him does. Despite the ugly exterior, love is one of the driving forces of the 3 families. Their emotional ataxia might make their actions and words be inelegant or uncoordinated, leading them to push each other away. Family dysfunction creates dysfunctional expressions of love, and for these characters, it is something that might remain under the surface, until they have the emotional tools to externalize it. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. We wanted to let you know that very soon we'll be having another limited t-shirt release, and this time the theme will be cosmic horror, so stay tuned. Also, in between our regular video essay releases, we will be making spoiler-free reviews of shows or films that we've really enjoyed, and we think maybe you should watch too. As always, we're very thankful for your support. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Today's musical composition was made by Eduardo Gonzalez. You can find his information down in the description. À la prochaine.